Hi, I'm Greg Kilstrom, host of the Agile Brand, and here's a question for you. How much of your marketing technology budget is quietly underperforming? Not because the software is flawed, but because your teams can't or won't fully adopt it. Because real agility was never about buying faster tools. It's about having an operating model that can actually turn a tool's potential into results and keep doing it as the tools keep changing. Today, we're digging into the phase that quietly decides whether any Martech investment pays off. What happens after the contract is signed with things like implementation and adoption? We're going to get into why rollouts stall and why the real cause is usually the operating model, not the tool. What it takes to move a team from trained to genuinely changed. How to measure real value without fooling yourself with usage metrics. And what shifts once the platform starts doing some of the work itself. Welcome to Season 8 of the Agile Brand Podcast. This season, we're going all in on expert mode Martech, AI, and customer experience, talking with the people and platforms behind the brands you know and love. Again, I'm your host, Greg Kilstrom, and I help Fortune 1000 companies make sense of Martech, AI, and marketing ops. Hit subscribe or follow to make sure you always get the latest episodes, and leave us a rating so others can find us as well. And make sure you check out our sponsor, TechSystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world adoption. For more information, go to techsystems.com. Now let's dive in. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Kate Dalbey, Chief Client Officer at Qualified Digital. Kate, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, always great to see you. Looking forward to talking here. And before we dive in, why don't you give a little background on you and your role at Qualified Digital?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Client Officer at QD. I'm responsible for happy clients. That's the gig. And we partner with our clients. We use the word partner, not vendor, to make sure that we're helping them build experiences that meet consumer and business needs. Um, when they grow, we grow, and I love that, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, I love it. And for those that may not be as familiar with Qualified Digital or QD, what's the company's core focus? Who are the customers you typically work with?
Sure. So we're an experience company creating connections across data, business, strategy, creative, technology. And in this era of AI disruption, I will call it, many organizations are coming to us to help them transform and change and adopt and practically use AI to help create those connected experiences. So our we've seen over and over again that modern enterprises, and I think you share this with us, Greg, like, they don't lack technology.
Right.
That's usually not the problem. The challenge is things have been set up in a fragmented way, incentives are fragmented, there's everything is kind of in silos, and it's not connected in a way that helps achieve business challenges that meet consumer needs. So that's exactly our sweet spot. That's where we come in and help clients across a variety of different challenges. We work with complex large enterprises like Mayo Clinic, CommonSpirit Health, Kaiser Permanente, UnitedHealth Group, Marriott, not Marriott, I've learned.
Right.
Uh,
Yes.
O'Reilly Auto Parts, CVS, Novo Nordisk, and AbbVie, and help them kind of unpack these challenges and create great experiences that meet business goals. And AI, as our CEO, Jackie Salim, says now over and over again, is a tool in our toolbox. It's not the answer to every single challenge on earth. So,
Yeah. Love it. Well, yeah, let's dive in here and we'll touch on a few of those points as well. And I want to start with what I teed up in the intro and just this implementation gap. It's I think it's in the three-legged stool they call it, people process platform. I think it's easy to blame the platform when rollout stalls or there's implementation issues or adoption issues or things like that. And certainly there can be tech explanations for these things, but how often is the real fault something else? A
mm,
process, a people. Yeah, yeah, we've been through this before, right? So what is the real way to kind of get to the problem instead of just kind of okay, we changed tools, so it must be the tool.
so I was thinking about this question a little bit too, and a lot of times because we're brought in, candidly, to help fix a
Mm,
failed implementation,
yeah, yep,
right? So, we do see a lot of times that the technology was maybe chosen for the right reasons, which it's going to meet business challenges that and consumer needs, great. That part has been done, but then it has kind of failed in the implementation piece. So, we're brought in to help right the ship there. That happens sometimes with our clients. Sometimes, though, to your point, the other thing happens where it was chosen well, it was implemented well, and now there's kind of an adoption problem where people are struggling with moving from the thing that was built to now we're gonna use that thing and then optimize that thing. And I think that kind of mindset shift of we're no longer only building, we're now using and optimizing to kind of orchestrate things is really a hard thing for enterprises to kind of overcome because I think a lot of those teams have spent 20, 30 years kind of building things, right? And so to move away from that mentality is often really, really hard for teams.
yeah. Well, and then from an executive support standpoint, nothing's truly easy, but it's easier to get executive support at the signing stage, and it's not dissimilar to, we're all customers in real it's not dissimilar to, like, buying a really cool, expensive thing, and, everyone's kind of excited about this new thing that it's gonna be the silver bullet that changes everything and makes everything easier to work with, and, I've been doing this long enough to know that, what you just said, basically, it's easier said than done, but, getting that support, there's certainly lots of reasons to do it. Certainly AI and all that conversation has been a reason to rethink how things are being done, make sure you're on the right platform, so on and so forth. But 6 months in, when sort of the excitement, the contracts are signed, excitement is wearing off, let's say, people are, what does real sponsorship look like when you're in that kind of messy middle area, and where does it most often evaporate?
That is such a good question. And it's usually happens to your point, like halfway through that big engagement where things start to just get really, really messy. So the executives have worked really hard to get all that vision figured out and bought in, which is not easy to your point. And then they've enabled a team to help realize that vision, which is typically people that work internally at the company and people like us that help, right, achieve that. The best executives that have seen this through to success are the ones that stay close enough to the work to understand what's going on and the choices that have been made to this point without kind of coming in and swooping and pooping.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So, in order to do that as an executive, you have to stay close and you have to understand the choices that are being made. Usually, when we're in that kind of messy middle, I've been having a one-on-one with these executives all along the way, and we've been kind of unpacking and what I like to say, untying knots together, right? So that we can kind of identify the challenges that might crop up based on our shared experiences before they happen, and then we can kind of point the teams back to where they need to go. But the executives that are kind of willing to invest that kind of time in terms of like showing up, even if everyone's saying things are fine, you still kind of have to show up and understand what decisions are being made, and then devoting some intimate time to certain partners so that you can kind of untie those knots together. It That's where the success happens. Um, the other thing that I see that executives have been very willing to do this, but sometimes brands have budget constraints, so it makes it harder. That messy middle that you're talking about, right? 6 months in, if we can get the teams in a room together
Mm,
physically,
yeah.
so they can kind of stare at the whites of each other's eyes, it's just easier to unpack and untie things when you can kind of look at somebody face to face as a human.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of work that into the plan in the beginning, and you have to know it's gonna get hard, and we have to have people come to the table together and talk through it, and then also then go, like, have a beer or have a meal or something and just connect on a human level, and it helps a lot.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I think and rightfully so, there's a lot of focus put on data integration and systems integration and things like that, but what you're talking about is team integration, which I think is, often overlooked. I don't think it's for lack of, caring about the teams or whatever even. I think it's often just glossed over because this is a data and a tech thing. So it's a data and a tech solution. But, so much of this, there's so many nuances to this, in addition to what you're talking about, which is, even just socializing challenges and opportunities and stuff. Training, is something that it's often a line item in a contract or something. And so, okay, let's get the team trained on it. And it's kind of like some of the other things where if we get them trained, things will work themselves out. But it's rarely that, a team learns how something works, but it doesn't change the way that they work unless there's other things involved. So, what separates a team that's been trained, as a line item versus one that's, truly thought about how they're going to use the tool?
So, the thing that separates the teams, because I agree with you, training is fine and it needs to happen, but the team needs to adopt
Yeah.
that methodology, that new way of working. And in order for them to adopt it, they have to see themselves in it somehow, and they have to understand why they're doing this new thing, this new way. I've seen trainings be beautifully put together, right? Like everybody attends the sessions. There's the new 6 steps that this is the new way to do it. And then literally the next week, no one is even thinking about the training manual that they were sent or session that they attended because they don't remember why they need to change. So you have to attach that change to the why. This is going to help us get better data so that we can make more insightful decisions. This is going to help you move faster as a marketer so that you don't have to do that grunt work that you already don't like, right? It has to be attached to what's important for them. And sometimes that's not a one size fits all situation either. So you kind of have to tailor that why to certain groups or certain people so that they can remember why they need to change.
That change management component, so, so critical as and, I'm sure you've seen the same. I get brought in, as a consultant, I work with a lot of different teams, and there's always resistance to change. I mean, even no matter who you are, no matter how excited you are about something new, we just don't love change as much as, our bosses or our clients or whatever would love us to do. But a lot of times resistance just gets written off as okay, this is a culture thing, like a wrong fit maybe or something. And certainly sometimes that's the case, but other times there's a real rational reason, whether that's long term, right reason to be resistant, as in, this is not going to work because it's not going to serve our customers or the business, or it's a short term, hey, this is going to disrupt everything in the next 30 days. Like, I'm raising my hand, please listen to me. I'm sure there's a lot of gray in between as well. How do you work with clients to be able to tell the difference between what's just more on the, let's call it on the toxic end of that, to more on the pragmatic end?
So it's to your point, is complex and nuanced. And what I've always seen is that I agree with you. People don't like to change. Inherently, humans are like, no, I don't want to do this
Right.
differently, right? So once you go through the exercise of helping them understand why, you have to reinforce that. That's many conversations typically. Then you set the expectations, they change. You have to attach that change to the business objective that the change is supporting. And even if it's like one tiny little instance of it, so say in B2B marketing, a brand implemented an AI agent to cold call cold leads, right? Great. Somebody has to be kind of monitoring that and watching that and making sure that's happening instead of picking up the phone and doing it themselves, right? So the KPI that's connected to that is pipeline from cold leads faster, right? The minute someone sees that actually happening, you start kind of shouting about it and getting people really excited and saying, "Look, it's working," right? And so the people that are willing to do that, are gonna buy into this long term, right? And then you have to get the people that are a little bit more resistant to change even more, and you use it through that data insight. So the faster you can get to that high level business KPI and the people that will go there with you, that's how you can tell this is like a real thing that's going to be successful. The flip side of that is people that don't even want to try. That's a different thing. That's a personality challenge, and that has to be handled much differently. But as long as people are willing to try and then see the results and then shout the results really quickly, like, that this is a good thing that we're doing together.
That's a good segue to, how we measure this as well, because there's gonna be, let's say, the people that always speak up regardless, good or bad. There's gonna be the louder voices in the room, and certainly they're valuable, but it can be anecdotal that way. So, getting some metrics behind this.
Yes.
And another thing just to be mindful of is, in my work at least, a lot of the adoption of new platforms and technologies is also moving towards democratizing a lot of things, which also means a broader set of people might be logging into things, or things like that as well. And so, you've it's another complication to everything. But, usage metrics like login rates and things like that can look healthy. Lots of people, other than those kind of naysayers, lots of people logging in, but not necessarily anything has changed in some cases. So how do you kind of read the right numbers in the right way and understand, like, what are people actually doing?
So that comes up a lot here at QD because honestly, the last thing that we want to do is have clients measuring themselves against productivity metrics that don't ladder up to business success.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
teams are all green, right? Every light is green. Great. But the business is shrinking meanwhile. No, we do not want that. And, we will have honest conversations about like if we see that happening and why we do not recommend it. I think that's where, like I was saying before, kind of getting to that KPI as quickly as possible so that people can understand that this is already successful is kind of the only way to do that. And sometimes it's not quick because you r re-engineered all these processes and all these people need to do things differently, and it's gonna take a little while for that to kind of come out in the business. But as long as it's tied to the business metric, that's the quickest way to ensure larger adoption.
Yeah. Well, and then as adoption spreads, a lot of these platforms are very flexible by design, and that's, isn't that a great feature until it starts fragmenting how everyone works, and it doesn't kind of align to the original vision, which any vision needs a little refinement overall, but you can potentially get into a very fragmented way that either looks very different than the original, or starts looking like what it used to be like, which was, there was a reason why there was a new platform brought into things in the first place. How do you, encourage teams to move fast, because that they need to, but also it helps them feel better about the platform without the operating model fragmenting underneath them?
Boy, you're asking me some tough questions, sir. This
No,
one
no easy ones today. So
oh,
yeah.
this one is hard because you have to design an operating model that's flexible enough to be reasonable, but inflexible enough to support achieving the business metrics that it was designed to support, right? So, thinking of an example of that, I think I was reading through some of the things that you posted on your channels recently, and I think you posted something around 98% of people that you surveyed said that their campaigns are launching late,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so to me, that means that there's probably a process problem somewhere. I would guess, because I've seen it before, there's probably some sort of approval gate in every single one of those people's ecosystems that people are stuck on. I need X person to click a button and say, "This is approved," right? So the operating model is, in that case, inflexible because the campaign can't go to market without that button being approved, but there are other ways to get approval so that something doesn't go to market that's, not seen by the CMO or what have you, right? If the operating model can be designed to need approval, but not gate it, then that campaign will go to market faster and revenue will be generated faster.
Mm,
So
sure.
that's an example of the operating model needs to have the approval gates. Of course, you can't launch a campaign without somebody looking at it and approving it. But a hard stop, a button that has to exist and somebody has to log in 600 times to get to that button, that's inflexible and that's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's the operating model has to be both flexible and inflexible at the exact right times. And to your point, you have to be able to be okay with optimizing it, especially in today's day and age where AI is changing things so quickly,
Yeah.
and you have to be able to respond to that.
Well, yeah, and let's talk a little bit about the AI, and I just I feel like I have started caveating that AI is just such a big umbrella. It's
Totally.
starting to become hard to just use that term as any one thing. I mean, I think a lot of people started using it as to refer to ChatGPT because we all collectively forgot that there was AI for 3 decades or more before, but
Google Maps,
yeah,
hello.
right, exactly. But that said, quote unquote AI, it can cover a vastly different amount of things within, depending on the platform that you're talking about. It could be, a single feature that a person uses, a system that runs a workflow, agentic, so on and so forth. And the adoption of these things is adopting an agentic workflow obviously vastly different than generate a first draft of a blog post or something like that. So, when a client says that they're adopting AI, doing AI or whatever you want to call it, how do you get them to be specific about, what they actually mean by that, how they're thinking about it, and how does the answer change how you advise them to roll things out?
So the first question I ask is, "Great, what do you mean by that?"
Right,
Right?
right.
And then I listen intently and, um, I listen for signals that tell me that there's a fair amount of original thinking and kind of what you can get from consulting the LLMs currently, because I think that's also a tricky spot right now is that the LLMs can be such a thought partner to us all, but they're also kind of repeating the same thoughts and patterns to us all, right? So the vision has to the response has to have kind of like equal parts, um, originality and, like, obviously, a thought partnership with where we're all getting it, right?
Yeah,
It used
yeah.
to be Google, now it's LLMs, right?
Right.
So I listen for that, and then I try to understand what phase they're in, because sometimes leaders come to us and they say, "Okay, we're trying to achieve this in support of this business goal." Always has to be those 2 things. We're trying to achieve this in support of this business goal. If they don't know the answer to the business goal, then we try to help them get there. Um, if they do, great. Then I try to understand where they are in their journey. Do you have a vision and you need help implementing it? Applied AI. Do you not have a vision and you need help defining the vision? Sure, we can help with that. Have you already failed and you have battle scars and you want to do things differently? Heck yeah, we can help with that, right? There are so many marketers at so many different stages of this right now. And I think the one thing that everybody's kind of reacting in the same way is everybody feels behind. Everyone does. Everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, I should be farther along." But the reality is I think some brands are actually now benefiting because they're able to learn from the mistakes that other brands have already made. And some brands have made some big mistakes because they've tried and then they've been brave, right? So I think there's also a little bit of w there's a benefit now to have waited, but I also think there people are right to be like, "Okay, we gotta go. We gotta do something. We have to adopt this new tool." But at the end of the day, it's a tool. It's not the answer to everything.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Well, Kate, thanks so much for joining today. I definitely could talk about this for a lot longer, but but we'll have to pick it up again. And along those lines, two last questions for you. First one, if we were having this interview 1 year from today, what is one thing that we would definitely be talking about?
Why do you keep asking me these hard questions?
Predict the future for me, Kate.
Oh, I think it's actually really hard to do that in today's era of
I know.
disruption. But that's also the thing I think you and I probably are aligned on this, like, that's what we love about digital marketing is that it's constantly changing and evolving, and I think that's happening even more so right now. Um, I think a year from now, we will be able to look back and say, "Wow, we didn't know that much a year ago, and we know so much more now," because it's only compounding. I also think that the value of human to human connection is only going to get more and more powerful. Going to conferences, grabbing that coffee or that beer with that person, going and making those human face-to-face connections, it's going to be more important to people because there's so much that machines are generating right now, and it feels like as humans, we're getting more and more disconnected. I don't know if you saw on LinkedIn yesterday, but someone announced that there's kind of like an AI slop marker that
Yeah.
you can put on articles now, which is super interesting to me, right? Because a social media platform is now saying, "Hey, as a human, you can tell me if this is worth it for you or not." And I think that kind of response is only gonna get more and more, um, valuable, where that connection from a human creating something else for a human is gonna get more and more important.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. And last question for you. What do you do to stay agile in your role, and how do you find a way to do it consistently?
Whew. So I've always been a reader my whole entire life. So I begin and end my day with reading about whatever's happening in the world of technology to just kind of stay abreast of what's going on. And I also I try to attach myself to a stat that is compelling that will also drive change in the industry. So for healthcare, for example, a leader that I really respect recently talked about how 14 million people recently used LLMs to not get healthcare at a health system.
Oh, wow. Wow.
What? Right? That's such a big challenge for the industry to unpack. So I'm staying agile by kind of thinking through every day what that means and how healthcare systems can respond to that huge challenge. Um, and it's really fun and rewarding, but also tricky, and it's something that I love to do. And I think we're gonna have to try and optimize and fail and try again to meet that type of behavior change. Um, and that's what's the cool part about my job.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Well, again, I'd like to thank Kate Dalbey, Chief Client Officer at Qualified Digital, for joining the show. You can learn more about Kate and Qualified Digital by following the links in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by Tech Systems. They're leaders in full stack tech services, talent solutions, and helping companies put it all in action. You can learn more at techsystems.com. That's TEK systems.com. And thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand Podcast. If you liked the episode, hit subscribe and drop a rating so others can find the show too. And if you're interested in consulting, advisory work, or if you need a speaker for your next event, feel free to reach out. Just visit gregkillstrom.com. That's GregKihlstrom.com. The Agile Brand is produced by Missing Link, a Latina-owned, strategy-driven, creatively fueled production co-op. From ideation to creation, they craft human connections through intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Until next time, stay curious and stay agile.
The Agile Brand.